Meanwhile, Ukraine is marking a day of unity today as fear continue that Russian forces massed on its border could poise a launch of an attack. Well, in a televised address, President Volodymyr Zelensky told Ukrainians who, in his words, are united by a single desire to live in peace. He urged people to hoist the national flag and to wear blue and yellow ribbons. The Day of Unity is in response to Washington's warning that the 16th of February would be the day Russia would likely launch an assault on the country.
Сьогодні важливий день, день єднання нас всіх.
Today is an important day, a day of unity. We are different ages, different genders, from different cities and regions, different professions, talents, knowledge, languages, religions, but one wish unites us all, the wish to live in peace and in happiness, as a united family with children and parents. We have every right to have all of this, because we are in our home. We are in Ukraine. No one will ever love our home as we do, and only together can we protect our home. Happy Unity Day, my blue and yellow ones. Happy Unity Day, Ukraine, in the east and west, in the south and north. It works only when we are together, and when it works, we are strong.
Захід, південь, північ, звучить.
President Volodymyr Zelensky there. And for more on the Ukraine-Russia crisis, we can now cross live and speak to Arise's special correspondent, Karl Bostic, who joins us now from our London studios. Karl, thank you so much for being here tonight. And plenty skepticism in the West on Russia's claims that it is actually withdrawing troops on the Ukrainian border. Well, can you bring us up to speed concerning this? Karl?
That's right. Good evening, Amaka. In fact, yesterday when you heard President Joe Biden speaking about the buildup of Russian troops on Ukraine's border for the first time, we were being told that as many as 150,000 Russian troops are on the Ukrainian border. That's about 60% of Russia's combat forces, all arrayed and aligned on Ukraine's border. This morning, we saw pictures of trains leaving Crimea carrying troops and equipment from Crimea back to Russia. Crimea has now been annexed as part of Russia, but NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg saying that this kind of contradicts whatever they're saying when they say they want diplomacy, in other words, Russia, that is. He's saying that what we're saying, it doesn't really add up to what could still happen. That threat persists, Amaka. You need to keep in mind this. They can still attack Ukraine without any warning. I think what's really important to note are two or three things, for example. You know, these troops and equipment that are returning, they're returning to bases that are already close to the border of Ukraine. They're not going anywhere far at all. The real test involves a number of factors. For example, those troops and equipment that are based in the Far East or Siberia, Maka, which are thousands and thousands of miles, are they being moved at all? The short answer is no. The ones that you're seeing right now who are leaving the Crimea, they could be redeployed as early as a few hours or within a day or two's time. And the same goes by what happened yesterday. At the same time, you got those military exercises in Belarus, which ends on Sunday. 30,000 Russian troops and heavy equipment and anti-aircraft batteries. What happens when that ends? The Belarus foreign minister says that we will promise you every Russian troop member and piece of equipment will leave when those exercises end. But is that really so, Maka? Because last spring, for example, when you had Russian military exercises near the Ukraine border in April and March, they actually left behind equipment. So the test is it's not just about whether or not they move troops or not, but are they leaving equipment behind to come back? And that's what happens. So, for example, you've got these very sophisticated anti-air S-400 missile batteries now in Belarus, capable of shooting down U.S. and NATO aircraft were they to try to intervene militarily on behalf of Ukraine through Ukrainian airspace or neighboring airspace. They could be shot down. Would those batteries go away? You've got the most sophisticated Russian missile batteries called the Iskander missile batteries. They're now in 36 positions along the Ukrainian border. Those missile positions are so precise they can land within 15 feet of the target. Whether it's a Ukraine command and control system, a Ukrainian airport, or you name it. And those missiles, they can be fired as many as about 440 missiles in the space of half an hour. So that's what's going on right now, because none of that has changed. None of that has moved. And as Secretary of State from the U.S., Anthony Blinken, says, there's a big, big difference between what Russia says and what Russia does.
Right, and it's the same thing that the NATO Secretary General is equally echoing. He says what Russia is saying might be different from what is on ground. And speaking about Russia, well, has the president, speaking about Vladimir Putin's, has his strategy really changed? Because today was seen Moscow mocking Western officials that had actually, predicted that today would be the day of the said invasion of Ukraine.
You're absolutely right, Mark. I mean, last Friday, there was an ominous warning that Russia was prepared to invade Ukraine on today, Wednesday, February 16th. And what was so striking about that was that for the first time, or in a long time at least, U.S. was declassifying raw intelligence, saying that Russia was in a position to attack Ukraine as early as this week, before the end of the Olympics. So they were doing one of two things. They were telegraphing the fact that Russia is able to attack now, and they are also saying that if this does happen, this is part of Russia's disinformation campaign, where they want to confuse people, because maybe it's a bluff, maybe they don't know. So they kind of call the bluff in that sense, and that might have caught Moscow or Vladimir Putin off guard. But also importantly, Amaka, this is not about just the U.S. and Russia. It's about the U.S. and its allies, because President Biden has already said, we're not sending U.S. troops to Ukraine. We're not sending NATO troops to Ukraine. However, we are in solidarity and we're coordinating with NATO countries. There are 30 NATO countries to coordinate all of this, and we will respond effectively. That's why NATO has now said they're sending thousands more troops to countries like NATO member countries like Romania, Bulgaria, and Baltic countries like Lithuania in the coming days, to bolster the eastern flanks of NATO. So what we're now seeing is a coordinated, solidified NATO response, something you didn't see back in 2014 when Russia's Vladimir Putin invaded Crimea and then started the separatist move in eastern Ukraine. So it's a different response now from the West and from the U.S. than what Vladimir Putin saw back in 2014. So is Vladimir Putin blinking or not? It's really, really hard to say. But that's why you've got these mixed signals in terms of saying, okay, we'll keep talking, but meanwhile, we're still going to send troops to the border.
And Karl, quickly, the big question everyone wants to get answers to is, can diplomacy work in resolving this crisis at this point?
Well, very simply, many analysts are saying, that's being reported and cited, that Russia has the capability to threaten to attack Ukraine for the rest of this month, Amaka, through the end of February. So this could go into March. So there's that. And as far as the public mood goes, what's really interesting is this, Amaka. More than Vladimir Putin fearing Ukraine entering NATO, to be truthful, they fear Ukraine becoming more and more westernized. In other words, for example, joining the EU, because now nearly 60% of Ukrainians, they want to join the EU. They want to become part of the EU. And when it comes to joining NATO, it's less so, but it's still the majority of Ukrainians want to join NATO, so to speak. Again, because of this change in calculus, that's why Vladimir Putin may be blinking, and that's why you still have the talkings going on. You've got G7 ministers, leaders meeting this weekend in Brussels, talking about this. You've got a G7 Africa summit, I believe, tomorrow, but that's now being preceded by a meeting by leaders on the sidelines to talk about how to respond to Ukraine.
Well, Karl, we'll keep an eye out, but for now, I'd have to say for your in-depth analysis, thank you. Karl Bostic in London for us.